What's going on, guys? Billy here, and after 2.5 very long years, the DJI Spark has finally gotten the upgrade that it deserves. And it doesn't come in the way of a Spark 2, but instead it's the brand new DJI Mavic Mini. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there love the Spark, myself included. This drone actually holds a special place in my heart because it's the drone that helped me really establish my YouTube channel. But nonetheless, it shoots great photos, the videos are okay, and it really does pack a punch for its size and for its price point. I would say that for the longest time, this was the perfect drone for beginners because it has everything that they would ever need and then some. So you've got some room to grow with this drone. You can flip it into sport mode. You can really get after it with this little drone. So again, it was really perfect for beginners. And with that said, with the brand new Mavic Mini on the block, I want to put both of these drones head to head, side by side, and see if the Mavic Mini is really that much of an upgrade. Now, typically I like to start these videos off with something like the build, the flight performance, or the camera, but I actually want to begin by touching on the price and what's included in the box. The Spark, when it was first released, costed $400, and the same is true now with the Mavic Mini, but this new drone that we get comes with the remote controller included in the box with the standard kit. We don't have to buy it separately, or we don't have to buy the Fly More combo to get the remote. That should have just been included with the Spark. Anybody watching this video knows the pain of trying to fly their Spark with their smartphone. It just doesn't work. And you know, the brand new Mavic Mini actually doesn't even give you the option to control it with your smartphone. So I'm really glad that DJI is leaving that concept in the past. But as we were talking about the Fly More combo, price comes into play, right? So obviously the drone for that standard kit costs $400. This time around, we get the Mavic Mini as well as the remote controller. So there's a little bit of value built in there. But the Fly More combo, for all the extras, the 2 extra batteries, the charging hub, the case, everything else extra, is only $100 more. So for the Fly More combo for the Mavic Mini, you're spending $500, opposed to the Spark's Fly More combo, which was $700, which is a really hard price to pay for a drone like that, even including all of those accessories in there. So the first thing I think the Mavic Mini does really well over the Spark is its price. It's priced very competitively. Now, we were touching on the controller just a minute ago, and I want to show you the remote of the Spark next to the remote of the Mavic Mini. They look identical, and in a few ways, the Mini's controller is an upgrade, but it actually is also a downgrade. That's actually going to be a recurring theme that we see throughout this video. Despite the Mavic Mini being the successor to the Spark, and despite it being much newer than the Spark, there's still a few areas that the Spark proves to be better than the Mavic Mini. So back to these remotes. The Spark's controller has a lot of the buttons that we're familiar with from the original Mavic Pro, like the return to home button, the pause button, the sport mode switch, a function button, the power button, some LEDs to see the status of the battery, and on the back was the shutter button, the video recording button, the gimbal pitch wheel, and another custom button that was mappable through the DJI Go app. Now, the biggest frustration with this remote was the fact that you had to connect to it wirelessly via your mobile device. You could also use the OTG cable to connect directly to the remote through the micro USB port on the bottom, but if you remember the drama surrounding this, DJI actually cut support for it for a short amount of time. Everybody got really pissed off, and then they ended up bringing it back. Now, the Mavic Mini's remote is basically the same design, but the sticks are removable. You can store them right in the remote, which makes it easy to throw inside of your bag. Just a side note here, out of all of the remotes like this DJI has made with removable sticks, these feel the best. It just grips so well and screws in really smoothly. Anyway, DJI has also gave us a more traditional way to connect to the remote with a cable that runs down the side of the remote, just like the other Mavics, which is a lot easier. Now, despite those two changes, you might be looking at this remote and saying, wow, it looks really plain, and that's because it does. The Mavic Mini's controller ditched the physical sport mode switch, the function button, and the custom button on the back here, just to name a few. This is the first example of how the Mavic Mini is kind of an upgrade, but it's also somewhat of a downgrade. Do you know what made the Spark so revolutionary when it first came out? Its size. This drone was one of the smallest we had ever seen, and for its size, man, did it pack some killer specs. But do you know what makes the Mavic Mini even better? The fact that it's even smaller and packs better specs inside. Now, when the drone is unfolded, its footprint is a little bit bigger than the Spark's, but the biggest issue with the Spark is these fixed arms. They don't fold, which made putting it in your bag or in the case really awkward. The Mavic Mini, on the other hand, folds down to the perfect size to travel with, which is really what the Spark should have done. Despite these two drones being relatively the same size, the Mavic Mini shaves off a good amount of weight. So the Spark comes in at 300 grams and the Mavic Mini comes comes in at 249 grams. While you might be thinking to yourself, 51 grams doesn't seem like the biggest difference, the reason that that's so important is because you don't have to register with the FAA in order to fly the Mavic Mini. The cutoff is 250 grams, and this drone is 249 grams. Now look, I don't mind having to spend the $5 to register my bigger drones with the FAA. I understand that, but there's a lot of people out there that don't want to get into the hobby of drones because they just don't want to deal with the FAA to fly an obvious toy. So I think that this drone being 249 grams is going to get a lot of new people in the door to flying drones, and then they might see the benefit of registering with the FAA and purchasing those larger drones. So it was very smart of DJI to release this drone at 249 grams. Now, while that might be good and all, it did come with some sacrifices, because this drone doesn't have some of the things that the Spark does. For example, the Spark has obstacle avoidance in the front to aid the operator in not crashing the drone, whereas the Mavic Mini doesn't. It actually has a little plastic cover where those sensors should go. The Spark also has quick release props to quickly change the propellers as needed, whereas the Mavic Mini requires a screwdriver to swap out each individual propeller, so 8 total. The Spark even has a nice array of bright LEDs on each of the arms, whereas the Mavic Mini has one single LED at the very back, which just barely gets the job done. Despite those differences, the design is fairly the same though. It's got 4 propellers, obviously. It's got a micro USB port and a micro SD card slot in the back. It's got room for a battery and a camera on the front. The cool thing about the Mavic Mini though is that now we get a 3-axis mechanical gimbal opposed to the 2-axis mechanical gimbal on the DJI Spark. This is definitely noticeable too, as the footage just looks so much more fluid, smooth, and stable. DJI really hit it out of the park with the Mavic Mini's gimbal because it does a really good job. Do you know what I would love to see? A Mavic Mini that isn't restricted by the weight. Now, I understand that a big selling point of this drone is its weight, coming in at 249 grams. It's great for beginners. They don't have to register with the FAA. But what about for us who have been flying other drones and we're already registered and we don't care about the weight? Like for me, I'm registered with the FAA. Why do I care that this is under 250 grams? So maybe they come out like a Mavic Mini Plus, something that maybe has bigger motors for faster speeds. Maybe it includes more LEDs. Maybe you've got obstacle avoidance on it. Maybe you've got a bigger battery. I mean, things that go against the weight. Obviously, it wouldn't have that great 30-minute flight time because you're totally altering the weight and the design of the drone. But just think about it. This form factor is really great, and if they could make it pack even more of a punch and just forget the weight portion of it, this drone could really kick some ass. Okay, so now for the back end of this video, it is camera and spec time. And I want to start out with the specs of the camera. I'll put some numbers up on the screen so you guys can digest the differences between the Spark's camera and the Mavic Mini's camera, both software and hardware. And then after that, I'll show you some image comparisons between both of the cameras so you can get an understanding of what the difference is. Now, in terms of shooting photos, the specs are pretty damn similar. The sensor size, the megapixels, the field of view, and the aperture are all the same. If not, they are too close to mention their differences. Even the resolution of the images are relatively the same, but for some reason the Spark couldn't fit in a few extra pixels to even out the numbers. Unfortunately, both of the drones are limited to only shooting JPEG photos, which is a bummer, but for who this drone is marketed towards, I guess DJI isn't rushing to add this function in. Now here's where the Spark has the edge over the Mavic Mini. Yes, I said that right, the Spark, the older drone. It's the shooting modes. You can shoot bracketed photos, you can shoot panorama photos, and you can even shoot these shallow focus photos with the depth sensor that it has on the front, whereas all you can do on the Mavic Mini is shoot single photos or interval photos. I'm really hoping and crossing my fingers that DJI adds some more shooting modes to the Mavic Mini after launch, and I'm optimistic because they usually give us some new things to play with a couple of months after the drone comes out, but these are things I feel like the Mavic Mini should just ship with. Now moving into video, this is where the Mavic Mini gets a big upgrade over the Spark. We can now shoot 2.7K video at a higher bitrate of 40 megabits per second, whereas the Spark was limited to 1080p video at a max bitrate of 24 megabits per second. We even have the option to shoot 1080p video at 60 frames per second with the Mavic Mini now, so if you like shooting at higher frame rates, you can do that with this drone. Another big advantage the Mavic Mini has for shooting video is the 3-axis mechanical gimbal that allows you to shoot smoother video, and it is worlds better than the 2-axis gimbal on the Spark. Now let's move on to the comparison of the photos and videos shot on the Mavic Mini and on the Spark. I'm not going to leave them up on the screen for all that long. I don't want to bog down this whole video with just photos and videos. So if you want, go ahead and check the download link in the description to a Google Drive folder. And from there, you can download all of the photos and all the videos that I show off, so you can look at them in their full resolution right there on your computer monitor. Also, I'm going to shut up and stop rambling, so just enjoy the images. So what did you guys think of the comparison images? Let me know down in the comment section. I'd love to know what you guys think about these two drones and their cameras. I think that in terms of photos, it's basically unchanged. If anything, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I think I give the edge to the Spark. But again, it's way too close to even tell. In terms of video, it's no comparison. The Mavic Mini from top to bottom just gives you a better experience with the 3-axis gimbal, with the higher resolution, even though I wish it shot 4K. And also just the overall control of the drone feels so much better. It overall flies better than the Spark. Now, I feel like I'm doing things backwards here because we're going to end this video going over the important specs that you might want to note about both of these drones. Now, of course, there's a lot more specs to go over than just what I've got here on the screen, so I'll leave some links down in the description to go and check out DJI's site and see the full spec list for yourself. But these right here are the notable specs of both of these drones, with a lot of major improvements made on the end of the DJI Mavic Mini. The biggest change is that flight time. I'm not getting a full 30 minutes like what DJI advertises, but I find I get on average 22, 23 minutes, which is just incredible. It blows away the average of like 8 or 9 minutes that I found I was getting with the Spark. Another major improvement is the range and interference tolerance. We can get the Mavic Mini out 2.5 miles, whereas the Spark drops off at 1.2 miles. Within that range, I found the breakup from the Spark to be really distracting. Sometimes it actually made the drone unflyable because the interference was so bad, whereas the Mavic Mini, on the other hand, hasn't given me really any trouble. If you saw my first flight video, you would have seen that I got it down the Schuylkill River about a half of a mile with barely any interference, so it's definitely a major upgrade. The one thing on that spec list, and that I do believe the Spark does better than the Mavic Mini, is the top speed. So it flies faster. We get a top speed of 31 miles per hour on the DJI Spark, whereas the Mavic Mini, I think, comes in at about 29 miles an hour, although I found it hard to hit that 29 miles an hour. So the Spark is definitely a faster drone, but in overall flight performance, the Mavic Mini is worlds better. I said this in my previous video, the drone just goes where you want it to. It feels so smooth, it feels so fluid, and it's really easy to get great looking, smooth cinematic video. And if you want to see some cinematic video with the Mavic Mini, I'll leave a link up in the top wherever it goes. And also, if you guys want to go ahead and check out some more of my Mavic Mini videos, I'll leave a playlist down in the description for you guys to go ahead and check out. Anyway, guys, that pretty much wraps up my comparison of the Spark and the Mavic Mini. Both drones are great, and I guess I should go over the fact that now the Spark is less expensive. So the Spark, I think right now on Amazon, is $320, whereas the Mavic Mini is $400. But I'm just going to say it right now, the Mavic Mini is 100% worth the $80 extra, minus the fact it doesn't have obstacle avoidance and the small things that I mentioned. It is a 100% better drone across the board. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think down in the comment section below. If you've got a Spark, are you going to make the upgrade? Let me know. And as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.